down my eyes, I know that God hears me. Say, God hears me. I've come to tell someone today that God is hearing your prayer. The situation might not look like it's changing. It seems like you're going through the same cycle. It seems like things are not improving. It seems like it's same day, my God, different days, same devil. But I want you to know that God hears you. He heard you in January. He heard you in February. Don't give up and don't be discouraged because the circumstance doesn't seem to be changing before you, but God is making arrangements for you in places you cannot see. He's making arrangement for his prophets. You will not die. You will not run out. You will not be defeated. God is moving in places you cannot see. And just because you cannot see him, how dare you think that he cannot hear you? How dare you think that he's abandoned you? How dare you think that he's far away from you? He's still with you. He said to us, goodness and mercy shall follow us all of the days of our lives. So even when I'm in the middle of poverty, goodness and mercy are with me. Even when I'm in the middle of sickness, goodness and mercy are with me. Even when I'm alone and things are hard in my life, goodness and mercy are still with me. God has not left you. Say, I'm not alone. So the book of Judges then is divided into 3 sections. It has a prologue, which is in chapter 1 up to chapter 3 verse 6. And then in the main body of the book, which is the second section, is chapter 3 verse 7 up to chapter 16 verse 31. And then it closes with an epilogue, yes, which is chapter 17 to 21. The prologue of this book, which is chapters 1 up to chapters 3 verse 6, it simply just sets the stage of the book by revealing to us an incomplete conquest of the promised land. What that means is that after Joshua died, the Israelites didn't conquer the entire promised land, but instead they plunged into sin and began to worship Baal and Ashtaroth. Say Baal. Now Baal is very interesting because he was the supreme god worshipped in the land of Canaan. Yes, when they came into Canaan, the supreme god of Canaan was Baal. And as the children of Israel were taking over the promised land, they were not only just supposed to take the land, but they were supposed to displace Baal and instead Jehovah, the I am that I am, as the God of the land. But when they came into the land, they didn't displace Baal. Instead, they began to worship Baal. What a disgrace. The God who gave them the land was the God they didn't worship, but they worshipped the God who, oh Jesus, the God they defeated was the God they started to worship. They started to worship a defeated demonic spirit. So Baal then is an interesting demonic spirit. It's an interesting god. He's known as a god of fertility. Say God of fertility. In that they believed that this Baal, this god, he had the ability to help them produce crops and help them to produce children. And Baal had 2 sisters, yes, which was Ashtoreth. She was a fertility goddess associated with the stars, and Anath was a goddess of love and war. So the Canaanites worshipped Baal as the sun god and as the god of all storms as well, which means they believed that Baal controlled the seasons of life. Baal doesn't control no seasons of life. It is God who controls the seasons of your life. It is God who can change your season from a winter season to a summer season. It is God who can turn around your life from bad to good. It isn't Baal who has that power. It is God who has that power. Say, God has that power. So Baal then is usually depicted as a god who's holding a thunderbolt. That's supposed to be a thunderbolt. And in the other hand, he's holding crops, because the thunderbolt in his other hand represents the power of the enemies he defeated. Yes, because the Canaanites believed that this Baal actually defeated the God who we serve. And according to them, that thunderbolt represents the defeat of the God we serve. And the crops in the other hand represent his blessing that he releases in our lives. So every time they worshipped this God, they were saying to our God that you've been defeated by Baal. That shows us that you're defeated. And on the other hand, Baal also gives us money. Oh Jesus, of all things the devil could attach to a false god, it's interesting that he attached a demonic mandate of fruitfulness and fertility to this God, which shows us then the number one mandate of the devil is to destroy your fruitfulness in your life. In Genesis 1:28, the first thing that God said to us is, be fruitful. Say, be fruitful.
Be fruitful.
Your fruitfulness is the number one thing that the devil is out to attack. The area of your fruitfulness in your life is the area which the devil comes out to destroy. And you have to have a killer instinct to be fruitful. Yes. And the killer instinct is just simply a ruthless, I feel God pushing me now, a ruthless determination to succeed and be fruitful. Yes, he said to us, be fruitful. And to be fruitful means to be productive. And to be productive simply means to produce goods or services which can be exchanged for value. You have to become a producer. And in the church, we've developed consumers, people who know how to consume, but you're not called to be a consumer, you're called to be a producer. The enemy wants to block your fruitfulness. He wants to block your ability to produce. But I've come to tell the devil that my killer instinct is getting up, and I've got a ruthless determination to succeed. So the enemy places impossibilities and obstacles in front of you so that you cannot be fruitful. But I've come to tell you today that you have to be ruthless and determined to be fruitful. Before this year ends, I'm going to develop some fruits. I'm tired of being barren. I'm tired of being unproductive. I've got to give birth to something somehow. I've got to be fruitful. Say, I've got to be fruitful. So before Gideon steps into the scene, the problem in the book of Judges is that the Israelites are worshipping Baal and saying that it is Baal who's giving us this fruitfulness. It is Baal who's making us exist in fruit and honey, milk and honey. So before he comes now, before Gideon comes into the scene, he is preceded by 4 other judges. There's Othniel, Ehud, Shemgar, and Deborah. And the same cycle of decadent moral decay would ensue every time a judge would rise. The judge would remove the moral decay, but as soon as the judge goes, they would go back to the same rubbish. Say, I'm not going back. Some of you, before you got saved, you were the king of Puza Thursday. Some of you, before you got saved, they called you Tabo Stuyvesant because there was always a courtly, my God, in your back pocket. But you've got to make up your mind that once God delivers me, I'm not going back. Have you ever met people in the world who, when they see you, they say, where are you these days? We don't see you in the club no more. We don't see you in Caprivi no more. We don't see you out like you used to be. What's going on? What you have to tell them is, you cannot find the living amongst the dead. I came out of the tomb and I'm not going back. Say, I'm not going back. You cannot go back to what you used to be. It's time for holiness and integrity in the house of God. Once I am saved, once I am in Christ, he who comes into Christ becomes a new creature. I am a new creation. I am born again. Old things are passed away. I don't need to go back to what I used to be. I'm now a church boy. I'm now a church woman. I pray, I fast, I speak in tongues. If you want to find me, you'll find me in the house of God. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of God than to dwell in the tents of taboo and my God. I would rather be an usher in the house of God than dance next to this kwasa person, because I am a child of God, and I'm going to live like a child of God. I'm not going to backslide and go back to what I used to be. I was having a conversation with